Survivor Specialist Phil and Alexa are back with our Survivor China rewatch. We are on episode 12, the penultimate episode of this season. Only one more episode left. It's a good finale. Only one boot, which I always find interesting when we get finales that only have one boot, but all of that aside, we finally see the end of PG, the end of Jean Hu. She very nearly pulls out this immunity challenge. I always kind of forget that she does, and it almost seems crazy to me that she's not able to beat Amanda in that. I think Amanda's height advantage there really does do her in ultimately for PG. But this episode does have my new favorite line of Survivor China, which is PG at Tribal Council saying, "I am one of those positive people." And that made me almost fall out of my chair laughing, because PG, you're a lot of things, but you are not one of those positive people. Maybe more positive than Courtney. That's not very hard to do, though. But when she said that, I was like, I don't know if I would go that far on this one. But anyway.
I also had a quote that made me go like, huh? That one stuck out to me, but another one was, this is in between the immunity challenge and Tribal Council. Amanda talks to, I believe it's Amanda talking to PG, and she goes, "I've always been open to change things up." And I was like,
no, you haven't.
Since when? Like, absolutely not. You wouldn't even tell PG the plan when you guys were getting rid of James. So there's a few like head scratching moments in this one, but PG does put up a good fight. I am a sucker for these immunity challenges where you go through things that you've already done, and that's only accentuated because the challenges in the season I think are really good.
Yeah, and I think that they got lucky with this one, the fact that PG actually makes it till the end, because, again, we talked about, I think in one of our patron podcasts, we talked about how it can be an issue when you do these elimination-style challenges, because if the person who's in trouble doesn't make it to the last round, right, then you're in trouble, and PG ultimately does make it to the last round, but she almost went home in that first section, and then you would have known PG's going home the entire episode, because let's be real, you know that there's no way she's going to be able to survive this. Survivor does give you a little bit of hope with Amanda and Denise, and could they possibly flip it, and could it work? But if Denise was actually going to work with PG at any point on the season, she would have taken PG on a damn reward, which she never does, and I love it. But yeah, it's just, you know, before the immunity idol days, or before they were getting replanted and stuff like that, this is how a lot of episodes went, and they had to kind of create their own storyline. And even though there was never really a chance PG was going to stay, you still watch that episode thinking, wow, is PG actually going to pull this off? Because Amanda had blindsided James, and because Denise really didn't seem like she had any type of path to the final three. This is where it would have made sense for Denise to make a move, not last week. However, there was no way Amanda was going to do it, because I think Amanda thinks she sits down next to those negative Nancys and Todd and Courtney, and she wins in a landslide, no questions asked.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what she's thinking. And I think Denise also kind of thinks so too, because like we were talking about last week, Denise doesn't necessarily win if it's against, I mean, Claire definitely doesn't win if it's against Todd, but there was a conversation about, okay, if it's her, PG and Eric, what do you think about that? So I think for both Denise and Amanda, in their minds, it makes total sense to get rid of PG, because you never want to sit as unlikable or whatever as PG has been. You don't want to sit next to her at the end, because she is the kind of sole survivor of that group. And I think you're right. I think Amanda does think that she's going to beat Todd, because Todd is really snaky. And another thing I didn't really realize until this rewatch is how open everyone is about how they feel about that. And people, I guess we're still at a time where 15 seasons in, where it's not like snakiness doesn't get totally rewarded the way it does in present day Survivor, and it's not completely hated like it is in early Survivor. So I think it's for Amanda's position, I think it is a fair bet for her to think that since she doesn't have as much blood on her hands, and she does have the James thing under her belt, that she can pull it away. But as we see in both of her performances, she can't pull anything away in Tribal Council, no matter who she's next to.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And if you think about it, both times she loses to villains. I mean, she loses to 3 villains at Final Tribal. That's a fact. So
and I think if she plays up that, because obviously, like, I think if she plays up the kind of quote unquote hero-ness more, or just owns herself, but I think if you own it and play up the I'm the good guy of that group, then I think she nails it. But again, she misses a lot in these tribal councils.
Yeah, she doesn't know what she's doing, and I think that ultimately comes down to she tries too hard to play the look at me, I wasn't stepping on any toes, I wasn't doing anything wrong the entire time, and it ends up biting her. Because that is really what she's trying to do. I mean, even the way she talks about PG, it's so great that we're getting to spend this time together, but she's just trying to get a vote. That's all she's trying to do, because she was never going to vote with PG. So she's just trying to get a vote at Final Tribal Council, and I think. And John Millsap says here, the problem with Amanda is she plays like a villain but pretends to be a hero. I think Survivor makes it's pretending she's a hero, because I don't think she's a hero. And I would argue that nobody on China is a hero, because I don't think James is. I don't think Amanda is. I don't think PG is. I don't think Todd is. I don't think Courtney is. And I don't think Denise is. And I think that's what works really well for this season, is that they don't really just fit in. It's kind of like, okay,
it's like a likable Gabon.
It is, because Jean Robert is the clear villain of this season, but that doesn't mean that everybody else is a hero.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it kind of goes to the whole Breaking Bad thing. Just because you want Gus to die doesn't mean Walter White is a hero. He's a drug dealer. You know, like he cooks meth.
It's sort of like this season. I think I wouldn't say this season creates the anti-hero, but I think this season definitely, like, you can point to this and say none of these are considered a hero. 2 of these end up being literal heroes on the show, but you root for them. Like, you root for the bad guy, because you're not really pulling for PG. You don't really care about Eric. Jamie's kind, and like, there's just nobody else in that group. And Frosty, you don't really feel much about either.
No, and the only other season that comes close is Panama, where Terry isn't really as much of a hero on a rewatch, and neither really is Cirie. I mean, Cirie gets played up as a hero, but Cirie's a hero in a different way. But Cirie still got a little Courtney to her. Like, Cirie speaks her mind pretty freely, which is why we love Cirie.
The thing with Cirie is she does it in like a tone of voice that's cute, and it's amazing what you can get away with when you use a kind tone of voice. Cirie is by no, like, I know a lot of people are watching Heroes versus Villains right now. Survivor is like resurging back in popularity, which I'm loving. And Jeff says, you know, Parvati, you did this to Eric, and Cirie's standing there on the hero stripe. It's a complete joke. And I'm sure Cirie in her head is like, actually, this was my idea. So what are you doing there?
And not only that, we're told that Terry is Captain America through all of Panama, and who is his biggest adversary other than Aris? It's Cirie.
It's so it's so funny to me that the Terry thing, my family never saw it with him. So so I think, like, for everyone he was Captain America for, like, I was always on Team Aris and Cirie, but he's Captain America in the sense of, like, he's the hot fighter pilot, and so I think Cirie, she's kind of the hero. It's like the concept of Cirie is the hero, like the mom who got up the couch. That is the heroic thing. Her gameplay is very villainous, and I think that's probably what's so appealing about Cirie.
I think, too, what hurts you is that you didn't watch it in order, because Terry was essentially Tom Westman. And Tom Westman being as much of a hero as he was in Palau, Terry following that up. But kind of what you're saying here with Cirie, where just the concept of her, it's why she can get away with saying what she does, but Courtney cannot. Because a waitress from New York is nowhere near as endearing, no matter how tiny and skinny she is, as a mom who got up off the couch, who's a nurse. You know, like, there's a big difference there. So even though I would say Cirie for sure would be on the villain's tribe, I mean, she was a part of the Black Widow Brigade, who was a villainous group of women. I would also say Amanda probably belonged on the villain tribe. But you know, obviously they have to push it, and Amanda kind of gets put as the hero just because on Survivor China, there was no hero. James is a hero because they needed a hero. And, you know, it makes it a little bit, it's interesting to watch this season over and over. And I always go and say this, but I love my complex characters. I love my heroes who are screaming. I love that James yells at PG. I love that Courtney ends up saying the welfare thing at Final Four. Like, but I also love that Courtney and her dad are great, and that Courtney is able to get as far as she is and be good to the people around her, despite the fact that she says some awful things in confessionals. I like my characters complex, and, you know, I think that that's what makes it better. I'd rather, you know, them make these moments of Todd, who, as we all know, goes on to be our winner, it makes it more fun to watch him still slip up along the way and have people say he's kind of a dick. We don't really like him. I think that works better than Tommy in season 39. Anytime he had a bad moment, they just ignored it so that they could show somebody else, and we never get any dislike for Tommy. Like that, it just works better this way.
Yeah, I don't know if we could do a whole podcast. I'm so sorry for everyone who's here for a China conversation because we're kind of weaving in and out of it. I don't think we could do a whole podcast on it, but I'd like to figure out when exactly they made the winner, for lack of a better term, whitewashed or milk toast or whatever word you want to use. I think it's like definitely post Tony, but because like you think about Denise, you didn't really have to make Denise nice, and Denise kind of snaps at Abby a little bit. Kim has a very like overconfident air about her. Fabi, like I'm trying to think of people in their 20s, but I think it's definitely post Tony.
It was post Mike Holloway, because Worlds Apart was so negatively received, and Mike Holloway was not seen as much of a hero as the editors wanted because of the whole debacle at the reward challenge or at the auction. Thank you. Because of that. And then if you realize Jeremy Collins, nothing wrong. Michelle, they don't show a single bad moment. Yeah. Adam, they show a little bit because of the Taylor situation and everything, but we never get
Adam too. You can get away with it because there were so many winner contenders on that season that it was almost easy to give like a pretty fair assessment.
And then after that, I mean, everybody is just golden the entire time, So Adam's kind of the last one who kind of fits in there, but really it's just the Taylor moment. People will try to point to other moments, but they don't show Adam looking bad aside from the Taylor moment. And because Taylor goes home in that moment, he actually doesn't look that bad at all. So I don't know, like I'm seeing here, Worth Playing For says Adam had like 3 complex negative episodes. Yeah, he probably did.
Do you know what a CPN is? Because I didn't.
Yeah, so he probably did, but that's really the only player who had it. And it's almost like that season needed to have it because you had David and Hannah and Ken and Jay and Brett. Like you had all of that finale, even though if you watch the show close enough, Ken and Hannah have no chance of winning. All of that finale plus Zeke really were huge characters, like massive characters. So you had a little bit more wiggle room there, where on 32, it was like we're showing Aubrey as being great. But if you go back and rewatch that season, it's not, she gets some negative stuff that you just don't get from Michelle. So all of that's to say, like, I love that Todd is being portrayed as just like, if you're watching this live, you believe, hey, Todd could go home tonight. Like Todd could absolutely go home in this episode, and I wouldn't even question it. It could just happen. So yeah, I like the way that China is edited. I like that Denise always finds herself in the swing position because there's nobody really worse to be in a swing position. So,
right. Yeah. And with Denise, I mean, again, this like PG's kind of, this is probably a bit of a strong word, but PG's like vendetta against Denise for not taking her on reward at this point, 2 episodes or last episode. Denise is like actively verbally saying, I don't want PG to get any stronger. So Denise those are decisions that she's making on her own. I don't think Todd or Amanda are like actively influencing her. So I think the idea that Denise would ever flip to benefit PG, I think that's just really clearly not in the cards at that point when there's only, 5 left.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think Denise is trying to really play it up too. Like, hey guys, I'm on your side. I'm on your side. I'm on your side. I'm on your side. Because she wants to get herself into the final 3. Because I think Denise thinks she can beat any of them at final 3. So she really wants to push for it.
Yeah. So and what that does is that leaves Amanda and Todd as a confessional where he was like, Courtney hasn't eaten. Obviously, she takes me, and like Amanda can hang back there, or it might be Denise who said that, but they're not concerned about Amanda. And even still, we see this like really great relationship form between Amanda and PG. And this is something that doesn't happen in these kind of seasons, because when you have tribes that are just so divided and a merge that really just ends up benefiting one tribe, people don't even interact. Like Amanda and PG seemed to not even know who the other one was, despite them like occasionally interacting from a strategic standpoint. But they seem to actually like become friends and have a good day together. But Amanda's able to just completely separate that from from the
game.
game.
I think it would also be hard to not have a good day together because it's just the two of you. It's like Brandon and Frank all the way back in season 3. Like you really don't have a choice, because I mean, it's one of those things, like no matter how much you dislike somebody, if you're the only two people who are near each other, you're the only two people who are near each other. Like, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do. So like, I get it. I don't think Amanda was pumped about having to be stuck with PG. You could almost see that look on her and Todd's face at the end, where it's like, please just pick me because I don't want to go back with PG more than I even want to go to the Great Wall of China.
Was this you think they didn't want to go?
No, I think that they were more worried about being stuck being one-on-one with PG than they were excited about going on the challenge. Like, I think it's more of like that, like your friends are like, hey, we'll go pick up the beer, but you have to stay behind with the one friend who nobody wants to be stuck one-on-one with.
Totally.
Yeah.
I had something I was going to say before then. Was this an overnight? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was, because they had the beds right in the corner.
So, okay, so that's the thing. So this isn't a like, oh yeah, I don't know how long rewards are. I assume they're like 4-ish hours or maybe even less presently. But like the overnight one, like that's a long time to be with one person, let alone someone you're not particularly friends with. So that's really just accentuated.
And there's nothing to do. It's not like you can be like, hey, let's watch like a TV show or a sporting event. Like you're literally stuck just like at camp with this one other person. I always found the final twos to actually be kind of awkward in the day. You know what I mean? Because back in the day you had like like Tom and
Danny and Stephanie, like what?
Danny and Stephanie, Tom and Katie, like even going I don't know, you could even go
Ethan
like even
and Kim Johnson.
Yeah, like what are Ethan and Kim Johnson talking about in season 3?
Yeah,
what go ahead.
Even Aris and Danielle, because I watched that season so many times, like it's just kind of awkward that Aris like goes and gets injured because it kills some time. It's like they're always very, very weird.
Jenna Maraska and Matt Erdfan, whatever, Von Ertfelder.
That one's so
that's
good.
a weird
Even though
one.
they were like weirdly holding hands at the finale, but neither here nor there.
Not really my thing.
I did this reward challenge is the one that's actually reward is actually one worth talking about because again, these rewards are sick. Todd being a flight attendant, because in case you weren't sure, he's both gay and Mormon and a flight attendant. So I'm really glad they played that up. But he got a really cool confessional where he was like casually leaning on the Great Wall of China. And that's just, you don't see that anymore. And I just thought that was really worth noting.
Yeah, I agree. And I really liked this reward challenge. And I think that they could do something similar to this. This was kind of like the coconut challenge, but not as extreme. And I think that everybody needs a baseline. Like, okay, everybody starts with 2. But then you have 5 others that you give out, because I didn't like that PG could have literally ended up with none and she only got Courtney's. Yeah. But I do like the idea of like, nobody's looking. How many are you going to give everybody? But they do know because it's based on your color. So you can't really lie about it. I like that idea because it does give advantage to people who have aligned themselves better or to somebody who just sucks at challenges and you'd rather have the things in the hand of, which was Courtney. And as we saw, Courtney, I think, hit her own once. And Todd and Denise, she hit about 5 or 4 times on both of them. That's absolutely insane. So I like this type of challenge, and I love that it all came down to Courtney, and I love when she just turns around and she's like, this is anyone's game at this point, because she could not aim that thing worth crap while Todd is just hammering away at his every single time. I kind of thought this was a cool idea, but I don't like the idea that PG could have ended up with literally 0.
Yeah, because I mean, I think if it was anybody other than Courtney, she would have ended up with 0. So I wonder if there's a way. I mean, I guess the way to fix that would be you can only put one of yours in your own basket, but then that gives you less to distribute. So I'm not sure, but
that's why I think Courtney just set it up.
Courtney had double as much as anybody else, which I thought was a little surprising. I think maybe everybody thought like, okay, like Todd's the number 1. I don't really like whatever they think about Amanda, but I think no one thinks that Courtney's particularly threatening. So everyone just gives them to her. I don't think they think she's threatening, one from a strategic perspective or from a challenge perspective, but this is one of the challenges that she's going to do pretty well at.
Yeah, well, I think it came down to who do you think would pick up on this the least? And Courtney's that person. So if you like PG's like, I'm going to give you all 5 of mine. Hopefully she hits 5 of mine. Yeah. Like that's all you can hope for in that situation. And hey, she was right. She just wasn't close enough to Courtney's things, unfortunately. If she would have been closer to Courtney's things,
the Todd versus Denise show, which it's like kind of like what you were saying. Sometimes those like those challenges where there's levels like if the person loses, the person who's supposed to go home loses, it kind of sucks. This is one where it was like, okay, person A is just shooting between B and C. Like, is that fun to watch? But them like cheering themselves on, I thought was kind of cool.
And also because it's Courtney with a gigantic weapon. So
Yeah.
that's kind of funny.
Yeah. So yeah, PG gets 1, Denise gets 2, Amanda gets 4, Todd gets 6, and Courtney gets 12. And again, this Denise thing is fascinating because she's not, as we talked about, she's not going to flip, but Todd and Amanda and Courtney too, to an extent, they put so little effort into trying to keep her around that it actually is pretty amazing that she doesn't flip. And I really think if there were other people as options other than Eric and PG, she probably would have, because I still never really see Denise getting the like attention that the swing vote necessarily deserves.
And I think the problem was she never really was the swing vote because Amanda, Courtney, and Todd were never going to flip on each other.
Yeah, she needed another person.
Yeah, so her being there, like there was nothing Denise could do. And so Denise had to lean in as hard as she could into this group because she had to make them think like, look, take me to the end. You're going to beat me anyway. Wouldn't you rather get rid of these people and look how loyal I've been? It's almost like that was her only play. And it really was her only play. Like I gave Denise a hard time way back when we were talking about the season before it really began, or when we were doing our top 100 or something maybe. But Denise really didn't have any avenues here. And I do think that if she had one, she would have taken it, but she didn't have an avenue. We talked about at Final 6, how if she flips, it's either her or Amanda or Courtney going home. There's no reason to flip there. At Final 5, she can flip, but there's no way Amanda or Todd or Courtney are going to make it happen. At Final 7, when James goes home, maybe she should have went over to James and said, hey, James, you have to stay with me, and we're going to get PG and Eric, and we're going to vote out one of these guys before they can blindside you. Sure, that could have worked, but also Denise would have had to have felt confident enough that 1, she could beat James at a single challenge from there on, and 2, that she could beat James at the final 3, which I think she's probably thinking is the one person she can't beat. He's got 2 idols. You know he's going to make it past that part. Denise had no avenues on this season. And so for her to get 4th, it really was the best she could do. If she tried to overplay her hand, she could have went out at 5th or 6th because, you know, even if they get rid of Denise at 6, when they get rid of Eric, they could have easily just turned around and said, okay, well, now we're going to get rid of Eric and PG, because even though Eric and PG are tight, no way Amanda, Courtney, or Todd are flipping. So I just punched my microphone, but yeah,
wow,
that's
Phil
how it goes.
In a fit of excitement, Phil just like nailed his microphone off the stand. Yeah, I'm with you. And I think Denise realizes probably earlier than we expect that she isn't going to win. And so I think she's, like you said, she's playing for the money at that point, which, you know, I think we would all do in that situation. So,
and if she gets to final 3, she could win, but it's so impossible for her to get
you
there.
Can fight. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, let's talk about we did talk briefly about the immunity challenge, but going into that immunity challenge, so we have it's the broken down in stages. The first stage is throwing the ninja star, which was super boring the first time, and heads up, it was super boring the second time.
That's such a crappy one to start on too, because that weeds out like pretty much everybody, or just weeds out like any kind of talent. But
yeah, I agree. And then we have the balut, which comes back, and Denise literally puts it in her mouth, spits it out, and says no, and everybody else eats it pretty easily. Do we think balut is as disgusting as Denise made it out to be, or was Denise just playing mind games with herself at that point and was like, here's my nemesis, there's no way I'm doing this?
I don't know, because I always say I can never do a gross food challenge. The only gross food challenge that I immediately think of being able to do is like the blood and milk challenge from
that's so
Africa.
Gross.
Because I don't know, drinking something doesn't seem as bad as like a texture thing. Also, they did like kill that cow, so that kind of made it worse maybe. But to me, the balut doesn't like, I feel like I can mentally turn it into like a potato chip or like it has a crunch to it. And that to me is appealing rather than like
your potato chips always have hair on them.
Yes, all of them.
Nice.
But it has like a crunch rather than a slimy feeling, and a slimy feeling is just gross. So in my head, it seems like one that really isn't that bad, but clearly I'm missing something. I think she was playing mind games with herself a little bit too, because you see when the blue comes up, everyone's like, Denise, like, sucks to suck.
Mm-hmm. And Courtney does it pretty easily, and Courtney's the one who I would have thought would have sucked at it, and she does it really, really easily. So therefore, like, I'm sure it's gross, I'm sure it's disgusting,
right?
But everybody else ate that pretty simply, and Denise just like couldn't do it. And James, even the first time, was just like, yeah, whatever, this is nothing. So once he actually stops trying to throw the challenge, then we get the bouncy part, which I love that Todd goes out first in this challenge, because it does make it more interesting as like Courtney is moving on through this challenge, and you know that if she gets the final two, whoever she's up against is going to destroy her because she can't chop through a rope. So I did think it was interesting. I thought it was fun to watch the bouncing of the ball and Courtney pretty much rolling hers half the time. And then it's the chopping and build the puzzle. And I think Amanda's really only advantage here was the fact that she's like 6'2" and was able to chop through the rope with no problem, while PG had a lot harder time breaking through it. But both of them, there was some like Amazon women stuff going on there. They were just like cracking through that rope. It was pretty wild.
Yeah,
you know,
it was good having the, like, kind of like with the balut and with the knife thing. It's good that they like purposely take ones that caused people trouble. That always, always makes for a good little storyline.
I agree. And it would have been funny, though, had Courtney beaten PG on that bouncing of the ball thing, especially after PG gave James so much crap for not bouncing his ball properly and being the reason they lost. It would have been really funny if PG went out there and blew her chance to win immunity on that part. But it was better to see her go to final two, Amanda pull it out, Amanda get the win. And from that point on, you know that PG has no chance in heck, because she's done. She's just done. Like, it's over. You could actually argue that this is the more boring boot, even though it's a better episode than Final Six, because at Final Six, there's still that idea of like, could they possibly tie? Here, it's like, okay, great, you got Denise. You're not getting Amanda. Try to play it up, but Amanda is just really good at relationship building and really bad at explaining her game. Her problem has never been explaining her game, or has been relationship building. So she had what we see her with PG. That's how she's been with Courtney and Todd since day one. So, you know, a lot easier to push it when somebody's just that good of a social player. Yeah. No, you're completely right.
So and then to me, this, like, the conversation in between winning the immunity challenge and going to tribal council, it feels like they're trying, but like, I think we all kind of know it's not there. And it's a pretty straightforward tribal council after that.
What did you think about the reward and how they're complaining afterwards?
That was the only note that I took. I'm loving that, or the only note that I have left. I love that they're like, as someone who eats Chinese food like 4 nights a week, I love, Americanized Chinese food, but I love that they're actually getting food from the country. But this one, like, I can't even pretend to make the same comparison, but I've been to the melting pot before, and it's such a frustrating experience if you're actually hungry. So for these people who are starving and you have to just like drop the meat in and like hope it cooks and then pull it out, it is such a pain in the butt. So I think them coming back and complaining is hilarious, because that made like an already kind of miffed Amanda even more annoyed. But that was I feel like every time they come back from a award, they're like, experience was sick, food kind of sucked, and it's hilarious.
I know, and I this, to me, it seemed like it was kind of like a Korean barbecue type thing. I don't know how often people do Korean barbecue, but I personally really like Korean barbecue.
Oh, it's awesome.
So that's good, like you go and it's you like cook your own food and stuff, but also like this was like soupy and you didn't really know what you were eating. Like, at least when you go to Korean barbecue, you're like, I want this one or that one or this one. Whereas with this one, you don't really know what it is. And I think that makes it difficult, especially since like you just want to sit down and stuff your face. This is a great idea if it's like cool, like you ate, you go on your safari, and then afterwards it's like, all right, now cook your food. Sure, that's fun. But in this situation, these people just want to eat. They just want to stuff their faces as much as they can. They want to be James at that immunity challenge. And ultimately they don't get to really do that. So that's a bummer. That's a bummer. And PG gets really, really mad because she's just one of those positive people.
She's so positive. Exactly. And Amanda's always open to conversation. So that's what I got from this episode. What else do you have?
That's really all I have. Going into the finale, I always found this to be, I find it to be interesting that this is only a final three, or that it is a final three, being that they go to the final with four. Because up until this point, we'd always had two boots, except for in Australia, at the final episode. Even when Suri makes fire, she still goes home technically in the finale episode. So I always kind of forget what goes on here. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I love it because it doesn't feel rushed versus now we have 6-person final tribal or finale episodes. I'm probably going to watch the reunion because the reunion is ridiculous from this season.
Reunion, yeah.
So we'll incorporate that a little bit into our recap too. But I feel like we flew through the season. This was a fast one. I guess that's what happens when you have an 18-person season.
Well, it's funny too, when like I was thinking about this beforehand, like, oh, we started off doing interviews with like Sharia and Leslie and PG, and like now here we are, and it's crazy. It's almost Christmas. It's December tomorrow. That blows my mind. We're really we really got through this, pretty much got through a season of Survivor during a time. And I mean, hopefully Survivor's coming back soon. Alexa, do we have news on when Survivor's coming back? Has there been anything? I know that there was rumors, but have we heard anything?
I mean, I don't think there's anything confirmed by CBS. CBS doesn't ever come out and say when they're filming, or at least I don't think so. I mean, that's something we always just learn from spoilers. From my understanding and from what like spoiler stuff I've read, they're pretty much just shifting everything 1 year. So 41, definitely 41. I'm not really sure what the deal is with 42. They have the intention to film that in the normal slot of March. But again, I don't think that's like a full, confirmation. I think that's the game plan.
Yeah, I had seen on Gold Derby, and I don't know who Marcus Dixon is, so I don't know like how seriously to take him or not. In Gold Derby, I only know because of Oscar betting odds, so that's really the only reason I ever go there. But they said that right now Survivor's trying to do spring 2021 and do 3 episodes back to back in early 2021, so you could have a season in summer of 2021. That'd be pretty cool.
Wait, 3 seasons back to back, you mean?
Yeah, they're gonna film back to back.
Wow.
So then you would have a summer, a spring, and then a fall, or a fall and then a spring. Obviously, I mean, I don't know my fall, spring,
seasons.
summer. I don't know the orders.
Wow. Well, yeah. Phil and I thought we'd have a break this year, but sounds like we might not.
Well, I hope my break's over. I'm done. I'm ready to go. Let me get going.
Is it worth publicizing something we possibly talked about before this that we might try?
Probably not yet.
Okay, cool. Then I'll talk
just in case everything falls apart.
All right. Well, I'm gonna take it home to make this seem seamless. So right after this, Ryan Chan just told us that we should watch Survivor South Africa. You should tune in to our Australian Survivor recaps that I am currently doing with one of our patrons, McKenna Feeney. We are recapping the 6th and the 7th episodes of the 2nd season of Australian Survivor. Right after this, we've been doing this Monday nights, and there's like 24 episodes to this season. So we're going to be doing this for quite a while. And then next week, we're finishing up Survivor China. We're going to watch the final 4 and the finale, and we're going to recap that next Wednesday. But before that, we have our weekly Amazing Race recaps. I'm going to be doing that this week because Phil is busy with Andy Vogel, another one of our patrons. So make sure to tune into that. So we're going to do that right after the episode airs at 9 p.m. Eastern. And so we have potentially a few other things in the works, but one like project or event that we do want to publicize to you guys. Earlier this year, we've had these twice already. One of our patrons, McKenna Feeney, who also does these recaps with me, she and her friend Nick, they have been hosting Survivor Trivia Nights. They're calling it the Survivor Game Show Network, and we're teaming up with them. It's been a ton of fun. I participated in the first one. Phil and I got our booties kicked by Andy Vogel, and I believe the second one was by one of our patrons, Kyle Durrett. And it's a ton of fun. And we had, Sunday was able to join. And so we're going to try to make these more consistent. And if you guys want to participate, we have one coming up in 2 Sundays. Going to be on Sunday, December 13th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link to the sign-up sheet in this video. We'll also tweet it out. We'll post it on Instagram. And we will be joined by a survivor. We're going to keep it a secret for now. But if you guys are interested, they do a really good job running it. So definitely sign up. Definitely apply for it. And we think it'll be a ton of fun. And also become a patron. Go to patreon.com/Survivor Specialists. I need to drink after we log off because I'm so thirsty.
Going and going and going. I know. And then I'll be back a little more full time, everybody, after this week. I am about to traverse the great United States of America. So, yeah. So that is why I'm out again. But hey, everything will be back to somewhat normal after this. So, see you all soon. Listen to Alexa and McKenna, even if McKenna's the star of it and Alexa's proving that she's always a sidekick. Alexa, I haven't
please.
listened to
You should be reading our reviews, Phil.
I haven't read any. I haven't looked. I haven't done anything because I haven't watched any Foreign Survivor. But yes, and make sure to tune into the Amazing Race one because the Amazing Race has been a lot of fun this season. And Andy is so obnoxious with his knowledge of the Amazing Race that in that one, Alexa, he might actually show you up. So be prepared because
that one will be a little more normal because I say this with all the love in the world. You talk a lot and Andy does too. So it's going to feel like a very fair transition.
There you go. That's how it should be. That's how it should be. All right. Well, we'll see everybody later. And